The Orpheus model is never boring. The idea of Orpheus is that we take symphonic repertoire, play it with chamber music techniques. And what that means is basically that the musicians take over the role of a conductor.
Each one of us is as responsible as a conductor for having an interpretation, knowing the score, and being able to discuss those ideas with your colleagues. That's something that's very unusual in an orchestra setting.
While it's very exciting, it's also a real challenge to come out with a conclusion and a plan for execution. There needs to be a clear chain of command. You've got to have defined roles. And you really need to create a group consciousness.
In a professional symphony orchestra, for example, or a lot of corporations, you have one person at the top who's attempting to, quote, orchestrate, quote, the entire organization. In Orpheus, every single member is a leader. They all have an obligation to provide leadership to the rest of the people in the orchestra, and they're all listened to. There's more leadership rather than less leadership that comes from not having a conductor. It can kind of give you goosebumps and say, you know, there really is a different way to go about this business of working together and collaborating than what I've grown up with. And that's the power of Orpheus.
The Orpheus Institute is a way for students to learn what Orpheus is about, what it's like to play in an orchestra without a conductor, what it's like to work collaboratively on all levels, not just the music making. They learn the programming process, the administrative process.
In our teaching method, the idea is not to provide the solution, but rather to help them work through these issues by themselves, so that when they come out on the other side, they have a sense of their own artistic voice, which now they've refined, and now they've had to express to their colleagues and get the response and deal with either the positive feedback or the negative feedback.
Over the course of a few weeks of rehearsal, you really start to get the knack of being really open to suggestions. Throughout the weeks, you might experience a range of emotions towards your colleagues, and that's totally natural. The greatest thing is that once it does come together at the end, you know you've made the decisions as a group.
The main thing that Orpheus does is to teach students to listen to each other. And I think the idea of cooperation and the idea of ensemble skills is something that the Orpheus musicians can teach my students better than anything else I've found in any school.
As we engage in institute partner institutions, we plan also to be presenting the Orpheus model to business students. And the analogies for business are very, very powerful. That if you have a group where people are engaged, empowered, that they can disagree with the leadership, that this creates a product, in this case a musical product, that is more dynamic than one that comes from a dictatorial top-down leadership model.
Business school is great, and reading and debating case studies are great, but there's nothing like being in the moment, being part of the flesh and blood experience where decisions get made, where debates take place. And that's why it's so important, so eye-opening for business school students and business people to see this process for themselves.
Teaching people how to come to a problem with an open mind, with a creative spirit, and with a collaborative instinct, I think has much greater odds of success. I think a student who learns that way comes to business problems with a certain desire to come up with a creative solution. And in an evolving world and in a complex world, that's simply a competitive advantage.
Our goal is ultimately that there will be a greater acceptance of the power and effectiveness of professional musicians to play a key role in their institutions, and that more and more non-music students can see the benefit of the way Orpheus works and thinks and creatively problem solves.
We live in a world today where flexibility, agility, creativity, these are the coins of the realm, which is why I think the Orpheus Institute holds so much promise for teaching individuals and organizations from all walks of life about the new logic of leadership, innovation, and great execution, by the way, in the 21st century.